This algebra nation video will be the right side of page 48, problem number 4. By the way, did you know that ice cream was on sale at Publix this week? If you like pumpkin pie, you got to get yourself some of the pumpkin pie ice cream at Publix. So you watch this video, and I'm going to go get myself a bowl of pumpkin pie ice cream.
Lots of land that Barack Obama is considering buying so that his dogs can run around and frolic and have a great time. The two plots of land are similar rectangles. Well, that sounds like important information. Similar rectangles. Okay, we've got two different rectangles. They're similar. What does similar mean? It means they're proportional. It means if you took one rectangle and just shrunk it down, the dimensions are proportional. You would completely shrink it down and get something with proportional dimensions. So, similar rectangles, we're knowing that we're dealing with two rectangles that are proportional. Our bigger rectangle has a length of 4x minus 2 and a width of 7. That sounds important. The smaller rectangle has a length of 9 and a width of 2. What is the measure of the longest side of the larger rectangle? All right, let's think about what these pictures look like. We have two rectangles. We know we have a bigger one and a smaller one, and they're similar, meaning that their shapes are proportional. I know, I don't have the best drawing skills, but you guys get the idea. All right, so for our larger rectangle, for our bigger rectangle, the length is 4x minus 2. The width is 7. Okay? The area of the smaller rectangle has a length of 9 and a width of 2. What is the measure of the longest side of the larger rectangle? So, the larger rectangle, which side is going to be larger? Is it going to be this 7 or is it going to be this 4x minus 2? Which one is going to be bigger? Well, look at your smaller rectangle. If your smaller rectangle, the width is 2 and the length is 9, which one's bigger? The 9. The length is bigger. When we have similar rectangles, the sides are going to be proportional. So, if this is smaller than this, well, our width on our larger rectangle is going to be smaller than our length here. Because all you're doing is shrinking this thing down. So, we're increasing this rectangle proportionally. Which one's going to be longer, 7 or 4x minus 2? 4x minus 2 is going to be longer. So ultimately what we're trying to figure out is what is 4x minus 2? What's 4x minus 2? So there's a couple of different ways that you can solve for a problem like this. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple of them. So hang in there. I know. But it's going to help you guys really understand this. So let's see what we have. We can take the length of our first one, 4x minus 2. When you're comparing similar diagrams, so when they're proportional, you're basically setting up one proportion, a fraction, equal to another fraction. So we're saying 4x minus 2 over 7 is similar to the dimensions that we see over here, which would be our length over our width, our 9 over 2. Now I know some of you guys are jumping ahead of me and you're already cross-multiplying and solving for x and going there. But let's think about what this really means. What does this really say here? All right, let's think about this one. Let's think about our smaller rectangle since we actually have the values. We actually know the numbers for the length and for the width. We're saying that if our length is 9 feet, we'll call it feet just to have some type of measurement. If our length is 9 feet, then the width is going to be 2 feet. For every 2 feet of width, right? For every 2 feet of width that you get, you have 9 feet of length. Well, how much length is there for 1 foot of width? What if you were adding a foot? If you were adding a foot for your width, how much would you be adding for the length? Well, that's a different question, right? Well, 9 halves, 9 over 2. We're saying, you know what? We give 2 feet of width, you get 9 feet of length. That's the same thing as saying what? If we only want to have 1 here, 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1. 9 divided by 2 is equal to 4.5. We're saying, you know what? If I add 1 foot of width, I get 4.5 feet of length. Well, if I have 2 feet of width, I get 9 feet of length. That's saying the same thing. times that? Well, take our width of 2 times 4.5. That gives us a length of 9. It's saying the same thing. So whatever width we're given, we know that our length of a similar rectangle is going to be 4.5 times that amount. Well, what are we given for our width for our bigger triangle? The width for our bigger triangle is 7. What's the length? Well, just figure that out. Your length is going to be 4.5 times whatever your width is. The ratio of your length compared to your width is 4.5 to 1. So for every foot of width we get 4.5 feet of length. Well, how many feet of width do I have over here? 4. 7. 7. So for each of those 7 feet, I'm going to get 4.5 feet of length. 7 times 4.5 gives me 31.5 feet of length. 31.5. What we're saying is, you know what? If I have 2 feet on the width, I'm going to get 9 feet of length. For each foot that I have here, for this foot, I'm getting 4.5 feet of length, right? For each foot that I have on my width, 1 and 1, I'm doing 4.5 feet on my length. Well, if I have 7 feet on my width here, I'm going to do 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. I get 4.5 feet for my length for each foot of my width. 4.5 times 7 gives me 31.5. Did we just solve for the length of the longest side of the larger rectangle? Yeah. Did we even solve for x? No. Now, I know some of you are thinking, I don't want to do it that way. And you don't have to. You could set this up and solve for x and then solve for your length. We're going to do that, but I want you guys to understand, when you're looking at...
Or you could take a brain break. This will be you if you don't pass the state exam in May. Or maybe that was the Heat after Chicago Bulls ended their winning streak last year.
a problem like this, it's actually simpler than that. You can just reason it out in your head. You can say, okay, if the ratio of my length over my width is 9 to 2, then for each foot that I add of width, I'm adding 4.5 for my length. Well, if I've got 7 feet for my width over here, that's the same thing as saying I've got 31.5 feet for my length. Now, if you look at those ratios, you look at 31.5 over 7, 31.5 over 7, if we put that in our calculator, 31.5 divided by 7, we get 4.5. If we take 9 divided by 2, what do we get? 4.5. They're similar. Their ratios are going to be the same. All right, so let's go ahead and solve for this, just because we want to be able to do it this way as well. All right, so we're given 4x minus 2 divided by 7 equals 9 divided by 2. All right, well, what's keeping this 4x minus 2 from being by itself? The entire quantity is being divided by 7. So what do we need to do? We need to multiply by 7, right? We're going to multiply by 7. Whatever you do to one side, we've got to do to the other. So we multiply by 7.
If you don't want to do it this way, I would suggest you just cross-multiply, distribute, solve the equation.